You're being manipulated by the Pokemon Company.
Wow! That's strangely involuntary!
Yeah, I believe the Pokemon Company is purposely underprinting their new sets like Prismatic Evolutions and the upcoming Journey Together set to manipulate you and create artificial scarcity. Of course, that's just a theory.
A game theory.
And it isn't officially confirmed by them. They're always gonna say they're doing their best to print a demand, but I've got a couple of reasons why I think this shortage is something intentional. Fair warning, they may sound a little tinfoil hatty, but there's other industries this happened to recently that makes it seem more plausible. If you really think about it, the Pokemon Company has to have a ton more data on sales and demand than we do as the public, right? I'm sure they use that data to figure out how much product to print, what expected sales are, that kind of thing. That means they had to know interest in Pokemon cards was on a significant rise and that there was going to be super high demand for Prismatic Evolutions. If they knew that, then you would think they'd ramp up their production and go full steam ahead on Prismatic so they could meet that demand and sell more product. From the outside, that seems like the logical thing to do, but I think the Pokemon Company is going for a different strategy this time around. The thing is, I think they see it as a problem if they print to demand. If people know they can just go in the store whenever they want and buy the product, they aren't going to have the same FOMO or the fear of missing out or sense of urgency to go and buy the product. At their core, Pokemon cards are collectibles, and collectibles get their value both from scarcity and desirability. Those two factors can exist separately, but they also have a big impact on each other. If a scarce collectible is also very desirable, there's a huge jump in cost when you can't buy it for a standardized price. That's what we're seeing happen right now with Prismatic Evolutions, and to a lesser extent, Surging Sparks. With all these factors rolled in together, the FOMO really kicks in and it becomes a race to get any product you can find. Whether you're someone who opens packs, plays the game, collects sealed product, or if you're scalping for a quick flip. The way to fix this is simple. Increase the supply of product that's available at a consistent low price, which is, supposed to be the Pokemon Company's job. That extra supply would do wonders for the market. If the shelves were overflowing with product, scalpers would completely lose interest in it. The scalpers wouldn't have the money to keep the shelves cleared out, and they'd be completely drowned out by the volume the Pokemon Company should be able to print at. Then, once the scalpers stop being able to make money from buying up all the product, they'll get pissed, exit the scene, and be left holding the bag and everything they bought that nobody wants now. That would lead to plenty of products being left for actual fans who want to open packs without having to fight for them. Anecdotal example here, but I read that a lot of the people who were going to Costco's for Blooming Waters were just there to try and resell it and couldn't even tell you what a Pokemon even is.
He told me to get this Pokemon's app right here.
Apparently a lot of them are people who usually do sneaker flipping that jump to Pokemon cards just to follow the hype. Getting people like that away from buying cards would free up a ton of product for people who just want to open packs and enjoy the hobby. All the extra people trying to buy cards due to the hype is exactly what the Pokemon Company planned. Through these shortages of products, they're driving up demand and making product harder to find, but it goes deeper than that. Stepping back in time a bit, the shortages were first noticed during the release of Surging Sparks. This set really kicked off this most recent Pokemon card boom and started showing a lack of stock compared to the increasing demand. Booster boxes were almost immediately selling over MSRP, and they just kept going up after that. Current market on a Surging Sparks booster box is already up to $250, almost $100 over MSRP. Luckily on release day, I was able to find a local card shop selling Surging for $130 a box, and I ended up buying 2 to rip with a couple of friends, but I don't think we're gonna be able to see those prices like that anytime soon. Supposedly there's a Surging Sparks reprint coming sometime in the next month or so, but we'll see what actually ends up happening. If the reprint isn't absolutely huge, I think we'll see a slight dip in price for Surging, but after that inevitably dries up, we'll just see the price charts go straight back up. I feel like it isn't discussed enough, and when it is brought up, it's often dismissed. TCG Pocket absolutely had a hand in bringing more people into or back into the Pokemon TCG hobby. TCG Pocket released at the end of October, right before Surging Sparks released and Prismatic pre-orders opened up. It had an insane $200 million of revenue in just its first month, instantly becoming a huge success with wide adoption from the fandom. With its streamlined and satisfying pack opening, 2 free daily packs, super nice art, and a simplified battling experience, it was a recipe to get people hooked. Personally, I never learned how to play the TCG when I was younger, at least the right way anyway. My brother and I would just make up our own rules when we played with the cards, but TCG Pocket actually got me interested in building decks and learning the game. Beyond just the gameplay though, the real magic was in how TCG Pocket reawakened that sense of joy and nostalgia in people for the trading cards. It made you remember how exciting it was to open and collect cards again, chasing after that big hit. And if you're a completionist, that sense of accomplishment from filling in set lists is super addicting. But the real reason this game, in my opinion, had such a huge effect on the hobby is this. If people were enjoying opening their digital cards this much and willing to spend money on it, the next logical step would be for them to want to buy physical cards to collect too. After all, if you're going to spend money on packs anyway, why not buy packs that you can chase big hits that hold real world value? TCG Pocket pretty much served as a funnel. It grabbed people's attention, brought them back to collecting cards in a free, fun way, and made people remember how much they enjoyed it when they were a kid. People who collected them as a kid are now adults making real adult money, so buying an ETB or a booster box isn't going to be a huge hit on the budget for a lot of people. The interesting thing, and where it really ties in together, is the release window of this game. It dropped right before a Pikachu theme set, followed by an Eevee theme set. That can't be a coincidence. The Pokemon Company is smart. They know they're bringing in people nostalgic for Pokemon cards with this game, so releasing it right before 2 sets based on the 2 series mascots was definitely an intentional choice. So why would they not be prepared with extra product if their whole marketing angle was steering in this direction? With all that being said about the surging Sparks demand, the TCG Pocket release date, it was clear Prismatic Evolutions was going to be an incredibly hyped set. I mean, come on, a whole set themed around Eevee, one of the most popular Pokemon, with all the evolutions having their own SIR cards, it was already destined to be a popular set even without the current surge in popularity. With the expected popularity of a set like Prismatic, why wouldn't the Pokemon Company be printing a significant amount of product for the set? From what I've gathered, with pretty much every recent modern set, the Pokemon Company website ran a restock the morning of the launch day for a new set, but with Prismatic, that didn't even happen. This seems like a very intentional decision by the Pokemon Company to limit supply, especially on the more in-demand products like the Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs. Something to keep in mind too is we know they respond to demand and people overbuying, because the old limit for Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs was 4, and it has since been reduced to 2 for new sets like Journey Together. This is a big deal because it prevents people from buying a case of 4 ETBs to keep sealed for their collection, so it definitely shows they know where demand is at with the new sets. From the information that's out there not being enough inventory to go around isn't a problem with the big box stores, the distributors, or the local card stores. All of them want more product to sell.
Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards.
Squidward? Squidward, is that you?
It's the Pokemon Company that isn't providing them enough product to meet the demand that they themselves have spun up with the hobby these last 6 months or so. People like PokeNE and Danny Phantom talk about how they can't get enough product from the distributors and how that's consistent across the industry. But it isn't because the distributors aren't trying to get them more Prismatic product. They just don't have enough to get it allocated to them. This perfect storm of lack of inventory, hype, and demand saw one of the biggest price increases on the secondary market. Normal Prismatic ETBs are still going for close to $120, more than double MSRP, with tons still being resold daily at this rate. This crazy potential for profit when reselling is what brought so many scalpers back to the Pokemon card hobby. It got so bad that people were being caught placing air tags on the poor big box restockers' cars so that they could follow them to their next stop and buy out as much product as they could. Like, come on guys, they're just normal people trying to do their job. Let's leave them alone. You don't want to catch a stalking charge for some Pokemon cards, do you? I mean, I've personally gone into my local Target trying to catch a restock multiple times now, and each time there's literally no Pokemon cards on the shelves. Besides, you know, like 1 or 2 build and battle deck boxes, but it's not really something I'm interested in. I've asked employees each time I went in there, and the last time I went in, they said the restocker now comes at random times to try and give people a better opportunity to get product. This is the state we find ourselves in, and while a lot of people like to blame scalpers or the big box retailers, the blame ultimately falls on the Pokemon Company. They control the supply, and it's their decision to create this seemingly artificial scarcity that's driving up prices and making it so difficult for regular collectors to get their hands on the product. That ultimately leads to... This brings us to my final point. why the Pokemon Company is allowing these product shortages to happen. I believe we're heading towards a more substantial price increase on all products after the next couple of sets. This is exactly what happened with multiple industries, but the one I'm most familiar with is the car industry. During and after COVID, the prices of cars, new and used, skyrocketed. Some manufacturers just kept their new higher prices and created more cars, but some were intentionally making less cars in order to get demand on their cars even higher. Sound familiar? I think Ford and Dodge both did something like this, which rightfully annoyed their customers. Now, when can we expect this with Pokemon cards? I don't think it'll happen with the Team Rocket set, recently revealed to be called Destined Rivals in English, or the Black and White set. It may not even happen with whatever set comes after Black and White. I do think it will happen though, and it would probably make the most sense to happen when the next generation or format comes out. Looking at historical prices of different products, the normal Sword and Shield ETBs were around $40 a piece MSRP, but starting with Scarlet and Violet, they went up to $50 per ETB. There was an additional pack added to the box and a promo card as well, but that doesn't really come out to a $10 value increase on the box. Overall, it's hard to judge ETB pricing, especially since they haven't been around since the beginning and the contents of them has changed over time, so let's focus more on the pricing history of booster boxes instead. There has been an increase to the cost of booster boxes over time with each era of cards, although the biggest jump seems to have been between the Sun and Moon era and Sword and Shield era. According to the data I could find, booster boxes in the Sun and Moon era were average around $100, but when we moved to the Sword and Shield era, the average booster box jumped to $145. This is the largest jump in MSRP between sets compared to any other set in Pokemon TCG history. The modern Scarlet and Violet era booster boxes have an MSRP of around $160, a smaller jump than between Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, but another jump nonetheless. Those booster box prices have been the same since March 2023 when Scarlet and Violet base released, and a lot has changed in the global economy since then, so there's really no telling how high they'll bump the price up next era. My guess is that we'll have a minimum of a $40 price jump for a booster box in the next era to an even $199.99, but I think there's a chance we could even see more like a $60 increase. I think that's where this ties together. The underprinting of the current sets is the Pokemon Company setting us up and preparing us for the big price hike. They're allowing the crazy secondary market pricing to happen by underprinting the current sets so we get used to high scalp prices. That way, when they eventually ramp up production, they can also raise the MSRP. Fortunately, the scarcity revealed people are absolutely okay with spending more than MSRP, so why wouldn't the Pokemon Company want to put some more of that money in their own pockets? You already know they're going to cite the economic factors as the cause for the increase in prices, but really it's coming from the situation they crafted for us, to test what limits we would go to as customers. People will be totally fine with the prices increasing though, because as long as they're printing more, it's much better than the crazy high prices scalpers are already charging and people are paying. Said scalpers will disappear, people will be happy they can go to the store and find cards again, and the Pokemon Company will be the hero for printing more cards. At the end of the day, I think the more realistic and frankly less fun explanation is that the Pokemon Company vastly underestimated how many people would want to get into the hobby. But honestly, I'm still sticking with my theory here.